spawned a daughter company, Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 poetry books per year. Jonathan has lent editorial and management assistance to a number of literary and artistic venues, such as the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Mad Hat, Inc., and Big Bridge. He has organized literary performances in places like Alabama, Arkansas, California, Chihuahua, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, and Washington State, and Washington, D.C. His poetry books are Last Chap from Virgin Press, 2008, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust from Unlikely Books, Prosthetic Gods from New Sin's Winged City Chapbooks, and Standard of Sedity from Litfest Press in 2016, and more recently the free e-chap, Backstories from Argotist eBooks, which is run by, what's his name again?
Jeff Side.
Jeffrey Side, based in Liverpool, England. Thanks, Jonathan.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So most weeks I read a poem that we published at unlikelystories.org. The past week I'm not very prolific, so I'm going to read this poem that we published. It's called How Soon, and it's by Mark Ducharme. This didn't work out later, and it won't walk out now. Ms. Isolde wants to buy you a drink, I think. One owes the dead little but the truth. Whose truth? Is this music that we're listening to now? The truth comes later, whether frightening or sad. And the truth is music, actually. I mean, poetry. Whose truth are you listening to now? And where is now? The co-author of a song I admire by a similar title is actually a narcissistic piece of shit, I think. But I'm really sorry to be so polite in my rhetoric, as if words don't matter. And their saints came later, sooner than never, in a frenzy of the rational lives of the saints, neither glutted nor deplored. The poet is everything you thought you swore, brought in on rope or smoke on paper, quicker than life and luckier than death and its eventual delusions. Again, that was by Mark Ducharme, How Soon. All right, next up we're going to hear from our co-host Larissa Schmilo. Larissa's new novel is Sly Bang from Spite and Dival. Her first novel is Patient Women from Blazevox. Her poetry collections are Medusa's Country, Special Characters, In Paran, the chapbook A Cure for Suicide, A Cure for Suicide is a wonderful chapbook, and the ebook Fib Sequence. Her poetry albums are The No Net World and Exorcism, for which she won the New Century Best Spoken Word Album Award. Her work has appeared in the anthologies Measure for Measure, an anthology of poetic meters from Penguin Random House, Words for the Wedding from Penguin, Contemporary Russian Poetry, and Choice Words, Writers on Abortion. She's the original English language translator of the first futurist opera Victory Over the Sun by Alexei Krushenich. Did I do it right?
Krushenich, but we're taking any 3 syllables with a K.
All right, good deal. Which was performed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Garage Museum of Moscow, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and theaters and universities worldwide. She also edited the anthology 21st Century Russian Poetry from Big Bridge Press. Is that all available online? Larissa, the 21st Century Russian Poetry from Big Bridge, is that all online, or is it, oh dear, did I freeze up? Can you hear me? Okay, I think I froze up. I don't know if anyone can hear me, but she's been the translator on the Russian Bible for the Eugene A. Nida Institute for Biblical Scholarship of the American Bible Society. Larissa, do you want to read?
I would. I'm going to read a little ditty in iambic pentameter I like to call My Dead. My husband lost his shirt at cards, insolvent, he then drowned. In slick Cancun on our honeymoon, years now, it still astounds how fast a living hell can turn a life around. My godchild told me pointedly if she were to attempt to die that she'd succeeded once, a word this doctor kept, and took 100 opiates and drifted to her death. My punk rock pimp, a crush of mine, loved theater and art. He sodomized and strangled a young man who broke his heart. He packed a bag of bondage toys and left for foreign parts. Before her death, my mother called and calmly sat me down. If she could do it all again, she'd have no children, none. She lived her life in anger and despite us, all alone. My father drank and slept around. He was a well-liked guy. He said, "I loved you once" to me the night before he died. Was that a feeling come too late, or panic in his eyes? Okay, that's cheerful. Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce my co-host, Mark Vincenz. Mark Vincenz is an Anglo-Swiss poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 14 books of poetry, including, more recently, Becoming the Sound of Bees, Leaning into the Infinite, The Syndicate of Water and Light, and Here Comes the Night Dust. Vincenz's newest collection, The Little Book of Earthly Desires, and a novella set in ancient China, The Three Taos of Tao, or How to Catch a Fortuitous Elephant, are both forthcoming in 2021 from Spoiten Duyvel. An album of music, ambience, and verse, Left-Hand Clapping, is also forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincenz is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He has published 10 books of translations, most recently, Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz. That's from White Pine Press, and which was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translation. About Vincenz's poetry, Cole Svensson has said, Vincenz's poetry asks large and eternal questions and then deftly turns our attention to sharp details, the small, ringing specifics that make up the concrete world. And Tony Hoagland said, the ambitious poems of Mark Vincenz don't fit into any poetic scene or aesthetic camp I can name. He is an internationalist and his work mixes far-flung flavors. I can do this. Anyway, a little bit of Hart Crane, a little Italo Calvino, a little Pavese, possibly Vallejo. His poems have been published in many journals, including The Nation, Plowshares, the Los Angeles Review, World Literature Today, Raritan, Asymptote, and Plume. His work has received fellowships and grants from the Swiss Arts Council, the Literary Colloquium Berlin, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Witter-Binnert Foundation for Poetry. Vincenz is editor and publisher of the fantastic Madhouse Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, and where there are more coyotes and bears than people. Please take it away, Mark Vincenz.
Thank you, Larissa. This is called Hanging Out the Window for a Sparrow. Hunting in vain, there's blood on the boulder in front of the house. Perhaps a herd of clouds have gathered in storm formation, and the spark that flared from the lightning bolt lifted our sparrow right out of his shoes. Your flight, driven from exile, might pardon the stem of history, or perhaps in your luxuriant ways, even though you may be betrothed, the fume of flowers has intoxicated you. It all reaches me in a minute, the heart of a heart, a wily thing draped in white cloth. Everything is formed, dear sparrow. The lights beyond the mirage, that which is transforming, stutters, freezes, waits for no one. Comb the sleepy wall, the ever-shrinking shade. What protrudes in its own sprawl may not be the be-all. And if you must, in fact, think you rather should throb in the crystal gaze of the thicket, know your destinies conjoined with mine, in a fate where the fittest survive. But Darwin's dead, you say, and you're right. The hill slopes away, and the mosquitoes, as bothersome and irritating they may be, deliver the payload. For many years they lived in the verdant woods, upon the deer and the turkey, the spines on their faces high on clots and biometrics. Horizons too have been shaped by architects, each measure boundless in intention, a mirror or an after effect. I leave this decision in your unlikely wings. You refuse the much, you say. Don't reject the stem of the storm. Each passing whimsy is more and swells the heart across the fiber of your being, the shattered beams you have perched upon. Know this, it rained on all of us, even you with your little talons, even where the mad moth whirls or the wounded spring curls in that festival of chills, the mouth of the siren's snow, even there you go. Thank you very much. And now to our feature, and we will start with Karina. Let's make sure Karina's unmiked. Are you on mic, Karina?
Yep, can you hear me?
We can.
Great.
Karina Van Berkum was a 2016 Robert Pinsky Poetry Teaching Fellow at Boston University, where she received the Hurley Prize in Poetry. Her work has appeared in Plowshares, Prairie Schooner, 5 Points, and Strange Horizons, for which she received the Risling Award nomination. Her first full-length poetry collection, Barren Wife, is forthcoming in 2021 from Mad Hat Press. She lives in Boston, where she works at MIT Sloan Management Review and edits Spoke, a poetry annual. Her website is www.karinavanberkum.com. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you as well to Larissa and Jonathan for having me. I've been a long-time viewer of this event, and I'm thrilled to be reading. Everyone can hear me, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So I'm going to start out with a poem called "You Said Write a Poem for Me, Baby." That's the title. I want to chew your heart like a plum, its pit. I want to need it. I want to kick your pointless collage projects off a cliff. I want to be like you, or next best, to nest in you like a Russian doll. I want you to be full of me again, to monopolize me just inside, asleep against your spine and pride. I want the dog back. He prefers me. I want to hold your neck like a hungry noose. Will you cry if I do? I want you to, so I can comfort you. I want to burn the forest where we once lived. If my heart is barren, my land should be too. I wish it were not Dad who named me Mother. I want to know what word I am to you. Thanks. This next poem I read is going to be called Sophie. Sophie is walking toward me, her bird hands making plans in their pockets. How like her to wear a peacoat like that, to be cherry blonde still. I brace for her rage, but Sophie shines that smile across the white space, and I know I am mid-dream. I think out about the way my sleeping body must look, twisted socks, and the brutal face of old love as it preserves her. So this next poem is called The Residence of Narsak, and it was composed when I was visiting Narsak, which is a small town in Greenland. And I was there visiting with my dad, who might be listening now. Hi, Dad. Let me make sure. The Residence of Narsak. Ravens weigh this vista down. You see 100, 2 at a time, and they are always bluer than you think they will be. See? Their heads rise from ready breasts, kitschy foul, as if the winter has dark teeth. A Greenlander said the infant-sized ravens will keep punishing the rooftops, callousing their calls, casing the Arctic until they're done with us. They fly low, he said, to remember your face. I now am considering changing that poem to be about raisins. All right, this next poem.
What about the Raisins of Narsak?
The Raisins of Narsak. I think that sounds way cooler than the Ravens of Narsak. Bear with me. I'm not the strongest at reading aloud, but especially this is a new way to do it. Let's see. All right, this poem is called Second Take, and it is also about raisins. I'm just kidding. Second Take. Hell, take anything and see what happens. Take the hand of a traveler and she'll become stone, no longer wild or alone. Take the feral shine of childhood from the kiddies and watch them waste until they're paper birthday plates. A man said, "Take my love," to his lover, and they both became blind, and their cats and geraniums died.
Very nice.
Thank you. All right, this poem is called Sarah. You are different from my other lovers. Soft and milk-faced, gentle-scented, you are like a long, moony reflection on the Jersey Sound. I am caught in your nearness, nearer than the ivy to the wall is. I'd croon to the room. Judy Garland sings that one, and you'd love that. Your hands hold me like a drippy, cut-out heart. This poem is sort of kind of a part 2 from that last one. It's called Other Fish. My lust has grown up beautifully. It started on rocks and docks as polyps, and now lumbers in the places she might live. Every day scanning faces underwater. So I have a few more poems here. I think next I'm going to read a poem called The Atheist. The Atheist. The rabbit died because I finally asked them to kill it. Euthanasia for the body only, please. Let's see where the soul ends up. I'd never even wondered before at 17 or 30 because I had never held something so dead against my long living barrel of a body. For one half breath, I wished it was me, then took it back fast from whoever I was suddenly believing in. What if it accepts only requests for death? All right, this next poem is called I Leave Home. Sorry, I have a lot of quite short ones, so there are a lot, but I'm trying to keep an eye on the time. Mark, will you let me know if I end up going over?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks. This poem is called I Leave Home. I leave home and rise with the gibbous moon and drive. It leans peaceful like an unwatched breast. I can just see it through the summer forest. There, 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 and balk against such a gentle anchor. Who to howl to? Who could be mad at the moon? I burn lovesick and young up the highway. All right, let me just get to my next poem here. This poem is called Waterfront Property. Consider that the sea is subtle from the fourth floor, like a garnish or sepia frame outshined by the skyline. Go higher, to the 10th, a rotating restaurant beyond the tree line. Now the sea is as big and arresting as if you are in it, flogging around before leaning hopelessly into the subtle black surface.
Maybe one more?
Yeah, one more sounds good. Thanks for being my timekeeper, Mark.
Of course.
All right, this poem is called The Barren Wife. I imagine my sons pushing up through the soil in a row on a lowland plot. Imagine them rising like peonies, but awfully human, coming up twisting. Coming up twisting and wet, and they look like me, hard-eyed, a chin dimple on one late bloomer, and they need me, so I mind the plot, weed a circle around the fattening knees. After some years, I imagine this place spangled with my cow-licked kids, 10 hardy rows or a dozen hollering and knocking heads. I bring water, I check on them, but in autumn they die. No exceptions. Each body buckles back into the country, richening the peat. And my heart stays secret, and the weeds erupt without ceremony or space for a grave. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Karina.
Thanks, Mark.
Absolutely. Next up, we have D. Eric Parkerson, who received his MA in English from the University of Rochester and his MFA in poetry from Boston University. His work has been published recently in the Tishman Review, Hawk and Whippoorwill, Miracle Monocle, and many others. His chapbook, No Arcadia, was just released from Jane's Boy Press. Google it online. I'm sure he'd be delighted if you bought a copy. He lives in Lynn, Massachusetts. Welcome, Eric. Got to unmute Eric. There we go.
I'm good?
Yep, you're good now.
Trying to type a message. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mark and Larissa and Jonathan, for inviting me to this. I'm very excited to be doing this. So I'm going to read one newer poem, and then I will read the rest. Will be from this new chapbook that I've just had released. Thank you. Okay, so I'll simply start. This poem is called My Business. What is it that the mind makes sentences? Why do I feel the way I do all day? Duck on a dock, beak tucked under a wing, warm air pushing waves that break the quiet. The error of the self that is the self. Of the tree's 3 trunks, only one still stands, windstorm in the era of odd weather. The duck shoves off to glide across the pond. The question reoccurs. I won't repeat the line above. The reference is enough, and why that is, a broken milkweed pod, and where attention moves, not my business. This is either the east shore of Sluice Pond or an image invented at a desk. Jets flying to Boston Pass overhead. Silvery buds the shape of candle flames are clustered down a length of snapped off branch, an attempt that will come to nothing, end in decay, a term one fights off at first. 4 walls in 6 rooms, 6 rooms in one house. My pencil's rings of metal clamps are green, pinch the eraser, shine like the duck's neck. The crosswalk button never seems to work. This container has failed to hold me in. Thank you. Thank you. And now, as I said, the rest will come from my chapbook, No Arcadia. Not asleep, not awake. In summer, the one air conditioner is shared. You sleep on the floor in the air-conditioned room. His silence, his room. You wake because there's a presence before he starts. See the curtain, the pale moon, again his breathing. Each inhale pulls deep like collecting burrs drawing a bull-nosed plane along fresh boards of white pine, like pulling off soft strips of birch bark. When he begins again, you cinch your breath to his. Sleep, his dominion, his country. You, at the edge of a cool wood, go in.
Very nice.
This is a brief poem called Natural Laws. We cut the vine off at the ground and said, this is liberation. Pushed off with the vine clutched in our hands. Its dead fingers let go the branches, and we crash-landed on a wet bank thick with ferns. This was our generation. The failures from which we learned made it easy to stay down and cry, made it hard to stand. Yeah, so a lot of the poems in this book are kind of rooted in the visual vocabulary of my childhood home in a small town in Western New York. So many of them think about kind of the experiences of childhood. And this is another one in that vein called Staying Over. We played with the rotary dial on the pink phone, lifted the earpiece from its mount on the cupboard. His mother turned on the tap, which choked and sputtered, spitting bay water into the pan. Then he rolled an egg along the checkered tablecloth, delicate as a sphere of dried paint. This, he said, is the one day of the year this will work. At attention, broad-shouldered, the egg stood on tippy toes. Science or art, for him it didn't matter. Same difference. That night, top bunk, I had a dream. I wrenched out my teeth. I took my mouth apart, rolled from the mattress in terror, afraid I'd cracked my head along its fresh seam.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. I am going to read 3 more. This one is called Allied Territory. Wet the driveway to the farmhouse where we lived, near the north end of a road with 2 names, outside a town too small to make a noise when Durkee's closed or Nixon's roof collapsed. All those insurgencies of weeds and grass could stand for that as well. They shouldered up between the stones, occupied the edges to prove our claims had been provisional. A stubborn boy might pry out clumps of grass by kicking at the dirt on autumn days when darkness follows close the morning sun, or slam a basketball against one spot. But come next spring, the grass will grow again, and the plow guy who came all winter long, a helpful neighbor from just down the street, will have pushed the bigger stones into the yard, a further blurring of the boundary line, the delaying action masking a retreat. 2 more. This one is an elegy for my younger brother, potato grater elegy. No engine, no belt drive. Even then, Wayne County people wouldn't spend money to burn gas. No, for a few blisters, with a little muscle ache, for a few dark mornings in the weeks after the digging, they could do it themselves. No sense in being wasteful. We climbed down the hay chute into the basement of the barn, dropped to the floor, straddled the manure gutter behind the stanchions, the water dishes rusted stuck on their pivots. We crawled over mounds of clapboard, kindling for the winter, nails popping in the fire. Simple. A hand crank. The flat planes of the roller first kinked, then caught the chain link track, the conveyor. I turned the handle. My little brother rode the belt, arms up to keep his fingers clear of the rollers, hopped off at the other end. Baby reds and fingerlings would have fallen through and gathered underneath. Grade A's would make it, be collected in a rough sack, sold for little. The people before us knew not to want more than you can have. He has been ashes for 8 years. I never learn. I like the things that keep me big. Pizza, white cake, cold bottles of good beer, late conversations, little sleep. He is where he is. I keep what I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Very nice. And then since it's summertime, this last one I hope is a little bit of kind of a pop song about lost love, called Crush Hokum. I walked in want of comfort for my heart, whose rude, erratic language I heard thunk and plunge with me towards town in summer's heat. A storm-fell tree that spanned from bank to bank believed me when I laid on it and wailed into its bark. A dream where my heart sank beneath brown floods came back and sped me from the spot into the underbrush. I crawled until I'd left the Cold Brook Sound, and soon enough the day took on the hush of really middle places, where deer stands dangle from muddled oaks beneath the crush of clouds so bright they terrify. The bands of glowing blue which showed between in shocks of shape consoled me as I wrung my hands to Rubik's Cube my heart back into place. When the woods gave way to the pruned orchard, I lay down in the pickup matted grass. Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. Next up, we have Elisa Rusinski. Lisa has an MFA in poetry from Boston University, where she was a 2016 Robert Pinsky Teaching Fellow, along with Karina, and a teaching artist at the Boston Arts Academy. She has twice been a finalist for the Morton Marr Poetry Prize. Her poems have appeared in Prairie Schooner, the Cimarron Review, Mid-American Review, Measure, 32 Poems, and other journals. She also writes, edits, and directs picture books for Barefoot Books. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Is this working all right?
Absolutely.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And wow, Eric, that's hard to follow. Thank you for that reading. I'm going to start with a poem called Fairy Tale with No Known Provenance. The queen had 2 daughters. One wept, her eyes the opposite of green. The queen had 3 daughters, all of them delicate, obsessive as knot work, bundled weavings over bones. The queen had 4 daughters. Half of them had hair like tapestries. One the family badge, the emblem. One had a tail. The queen had a gallery of daughters, pillars of chivalry and blacksmiths to the echoes in the sea caves, girls who brought new furniture to the dream sequence, were sold to monsters like sets of flatware. And the king, he had a bard who told about it. This next one is titled after the second commandment, the one about no graven images. Thou shalt have no other God beside me. Thou shalt not make any graven images. For I'm a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. So that the title is taken from that unto the third and fourth generations. And it is a question and answer poem. The first line is a question, the second is a response, and then back and forth. On the page, that's really clear. Out loud, I only have one voice, so I thought I'd just say that. Where can you get a decent graven image these days? Disobedience is no longer what it was. Don't you have a few thin ones jingling in your pocket still? Yes, but those gods are so gorged on sacrifice, they can barely move. They don't even bother smirking anymore. They don't remember what smirk means or what it looks like. What language do they speak now? It was only the prophets who heard voices who translated them for us. Well, where are all our prophets? Their pockets are too heavy. They can't move. What do they do with their time then? They sit and count their gods like blessings. Like blessings or like sheep? Yes, they count and count until they fall asleep. And I will read next a poem called Soul Bone. It's based on this idea in Judaism that the soul is housed in a bone called the loose bone at the base of the spine. It's called soul bone. The rabbis say it lives in a diamond-sized nubbin at the base of the spine. The static puff hum that haunts when it leaves makes us more than mushrooms, curled into a cabochon of bone, fashioned by the same mind that made the Io moth without a mouth, so it starves out its brief week of life, frantic for sex. Lacking the pearl string of a backbone, where does the Io keep its soul? Hard gem dropped by a distracted lapidary, as ignorant of love as that moth named for another god's lover, a priestess, the ones the stories say Zeus turned into a cow. This next poem is called Desert. It's inspired by a line from an essay by the brilliant Mary Ruefle from her book Madness, Rack and Honey. She's writing about Las Vegas and the desert there, and she calls it the landscape of spiritual imagination, birthplace of 3 of the world's major religions. Desert. What is it about the desert that spawns gods and gamblers? The Aeolian harp plays itself, or the plectra of the breeze do. Something in the sound sieves gods, maybe, and gamblers are what's left. Every grain of sand sings a fable. Agate on the tongue is said to quench thirst. On the forehead, it cures fever. The same stone around the neck averts a lie. So then how to tell the gods and gamblers apart? By how much light passes through them. One's translucent, one's opaque. Any dune might be divine, but that's the risk you take.
Very nice, Lisa.
Thank you. I've got 2 more. This next one is called Moonrise over Hernandez. It's inspired by a photograph by Ansel Adams with the same name. It's if you haven't seen it, it's a very dark landscape with the moon hanging above it in New Mexico. And there's a big spread of mountains, and at the bottom of the photo is a cemetery with a bunch of white crosses kind of picked out. And it was taken in the last moment of sunset, right before the light disappeared. It's told in the voice of his son, who's waiting in the car. Moonrise over Hernandez. Daddy was driving so fast, the clouds galloped like movie cowboys over red hills gone bloody in the dying November sun, when gravel flew and the car skidded like a spooked horse. Wrangling his camera, Daddy hollered at the men, at me, "The light meter, where's the goddamn light meter? The light's going." And I watched him mutter about foot candles, slide film, cock the shutter. He said he got it, and we got back in the car and went home. Only after the water bath of these slick years do I see it, the image as he saw then. Crosses, chalk cloud, yawning sky and dry skull of the moon. How unlikely any of it was, those precious seconds before he took the shot, how the sun left right after, that moment of creation. How unlikely that I was there, am here, and here, and here.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And then this last one is called That Dark Center. And it is about Sue, the biggest and most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton ever found. A replica of which is or was, I'm not sure if it's a permanent exhibit, but we saw it at the Boston Museum of Science several years ago. That Dark Center. At the end of the exhibit, past the pair of stuffed cheetahs in mid-leap, amputees jogging across a screen on carbon fiber legs in 30-second loops, past the fluttering edge of the manta ray, dolphin flippers with their ghosts of finger bones. She lurks beneath carnelian spotlights. Another casting of the skull sits at ground level. I peer through it from behind, standing where thick neck muscle would have swiveled. Find myself face to face with a boy staring back at me through stalagmite teeth. For a moment, I could swear it's you, decades younger, and the wanting hits me hard, to carry, curled inside me. He races off towards footprints spaced to show the Rex's 30-foot stride, the full set of bones suspended, xylophone tail aloft. I tried to picture the chaos of this beast being mounted, the size of the eggs that slid out of her into a mud nest. Eyeballs big as my fist, twitching behind leather lids, sky darkening. Nothing here tells us we must change, only that we have so little time. That pelvic bone hanging like an unswung hammer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Fabulous. Next up, we have Noah Burton. Noah is the author of the poetry collections Lookout Animal and Clothesline Saga, both from Vegetarian Alcoholic Press. He holds the MFA from the University of New Hampshire. Noah's poems have appeared in Pen America Poetry Series, Sundog Lit, Outlook Springs, among many other publications. Currently, he lives in Burlington, Vermont, where he builds coffins, furniture, and makes coffee, and not in that order. I think.
Yeah, all of that. Should I go ahead, Mark?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark and Larissa and Jonathan. And I think it's Amanda putting on the lovely slides during the reading. That type of technology is really cool to me, that we've come this far in like 3 months or 4 months, but I don't know how long it's been. But so, and thank you, Karina and Eric and Lisa. I wrote down poems from each of you, especially ones with like first lines, like Karina's the one with the rabbit, the atheist. It's like, of course, you gave us a dead rabbit. Now we have to read the whole thing. There's no other way to go forward. So I'm going to read a few poems from my latest book that came out right before everything shut down, before we had the pandemic, St. Corona's Day. It's called Clothesline Saga. And it has 2 epigraphs to it, one of which from a New England, Boston poet, John Anderson, who's of my lineage, I guess you could say. But if all our losses are a mirror in which we see ourselves advance, I believe in its terrible, empty reflection, its progress from judgment toward compassion. And then another epigraph that goes like this. Second soldier, wait a minute. Suppose 2 swallows carried it together. First soldier, no, they'd have to have it on a line. And that's from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Arboretum, an echo, a gleaming. These are the sleepers passing in winter sun in their frozen cars. Eternity's eagle is growing. Just ahead at the intersection, a woman runs in place, her dog still as a drum on an island wiped clean by swords and illness. For one moment you stared at a stone, then another. Over each your boots. Sometimes your life closes its fist in the light. It is enough to make a ball of flesh beat with blood. The wing's shadow on the crowd's head is eternity's plucked umbrella. This book recently got its first review, and which was really kind and great. And there was one part of it where it's like, it's not exactly cohesive. And I did not take that as like a negative thing. It's like, I don't dream cohesively. I shouldn't write books cohesively. But someone else might disagree with that. Compact living. You dropped your face to my palm and sat on the curb. 2 developmental blueprints. Then you heard the cement truck roll by like a wet pile of leaves in a giant's breadbasket. The shovel, he uses it as a spoon. Around the corner, a lamb leaned against a realtor's sign. This agent was on duty. That agent was on duty. We were together then looking for a home that could grind our bones to make our bread. So I'm going to read one more from this. And last weekend I did my first kind of, I guess you could call it like a group. Didn't break kind of social distancing. It was a moped ride with a number of people. We were all spread out because certain mopeds are faster than the others. So I felt inspired to read this poem, which starts with 1.
Did you all stop at the same spot though?
We started at different spots.
But you stopped at the same spot though.
We stopped at the same parking lot. So we were in different parking spaces.
And so then you were like in a Truffaut movie or something like that?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. This kills me. I left my moped in the Emperor's garden, orange ribbed over the bluish patio. No weeds, no weeds, the Emperor yelled, his window sliding up, smattering down. The palms lean against the stucco like ladders of the crushes and all the Friday night sitcoms whining, no weeds, at the slight odor of cartoons in the flower bed. I left my jars of snow on the driveway and dropped my shoes on the Porsche. The freshly paved cul-de-sac socked my feet coalish. In precision all around, the waste management driver announces now through his bullhorn. This kills me. Whether to stay in on my day off or go out to some place and stay in there. On the stereo just now, the band leader tells me I can battering ram my life. The emperor feels his mahogany desk shake under the shadow of his gold feathers.
Thank you so much, Noah.
Thank you. Do I have time for 2 more? Does that sound good?
For sure.
Cool. So these are poems that have been written in the past couple of months, heavily during lockdown. And I don't know, much in the way that this experience of going to a reading kind of feels like it's settling my brain from a pretty stressful week and what has been a numerous amount of stressful or just like how to interact with the world kind of weeks. I found during those times having like prompts or just like a list of words to approach and use in some way during those days helped give kind of, I don't know, flavor, not just eating the same bowl of rice every day. So, stranger, I will get out of the way for you. Will you get out of the way for me? The angel's supper is just beginning with pewter plates made of mercury silver. There is enough in the things we don't know for us to say, yes, there is as many lost crowns as there are acorns. And maybe trees are perfect ligaments. Walking all day, I have picked up more feet than I have, which is not as surprising as the accordion thief's infrequent outbursts. Her keys are taped like ducked shark fins on a Buick Electra. We turn our heads together as the car passes us. The angels drop their soft-boiled egg forks as the car passes them. I cannot always tell what it is that is going on. And during this time, I recently moved into an apartment with my partner, Sadie, who's sitting over on the other side of it. And so this is a love poem to end. Tender. Here are the first flowers, I think. I'm always surprised when they come back, you say. The sun petals on the water like a tossed umbrella made of oobleck over the lake waves as I wave at the pickup trucks going down West Shore Road on South Hero Island. Is Vermont wine bad? I ask you, and after some mulling about the topic, we decide it doesn't matter too much. There are vineyards near houses and vineyards near forests. We can afford neither. In time, down the road, among the red and green and orange, pink, neon-painted birdhouses, hundreds in the forest, 3/4-sized and likewise painted dinosaurs, we hear the toads. This global gawking of cattail callers down in wetland water on wooden rafters near moss roofs, while 2 ducks fly over your pinkish and reddish hair. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Would your partner like to take a bow as well, or?
No.
No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Karina, Eric, Lisa, and Noah, for such a wonderful reading. We're delighted to have had you today. And I'm now going to hand the show over to our impresaria, Larissa, who will handle the open mic portion of this evening.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Once again, please let's give a wonderful hand to Karina Van Berkum, Noah Burton, Elisa Rusinski, and D. Eric Parkerson. These poets clearly have a brilliant future ahead of them, and we are blessed to have them here today. Thank you so much for a wonderful reading. Thank you, guys. That was really, really beautiful, really beautiful. Remember the names: Karina Van Berkum, Noah Burton, Elisa Rusinski, and D. Eric Parkinson. That's wonderful. Before I go into the open mic, I would like to make a couple of announcements. I'd like to tell you about upcoming shows. Next week, August 15th, we have the Gaudy Boy Showcase with Lawrence Lacambra Eichbill, Jennifer Sang-Eun Park, and Paula Mendoza. Check that out. And August 22nd, we have a showcase of Australian poets, one of whom is here today. We will have films and the presence of John Kinsella. We will have Cassandra Atherton, Shastra Dio, and Judith Christian. Definitely show up on August 22nd and come and see us next week. All right, let's start our open mic. Is David Blair here? David, can you unmute?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Yes,
You
you
are.
are.
Hey, it's great to hear everybody. Noah, what's up? All right, here's a new poem. The William Kennedy Montessori School. Kind of like the love child of Norton, the trash man from the Honeymooners, and the marionette madam, the sources of whose voice fooled nobody. You know that string bean Hogan or Rooney, not Irish like they named him Finton or something, but Bernie, who has no lips at all and a long nose and eyes close together. The old unofficial, semi-official, he was a crossing guard. You believe that guy passed Corey check paperwork, was so messed up. Finally, I think around the way, he was a squid in some war with anchor tattoo that nobody saw but his doctor and his wife, that had fallen into the wrinkles of his arm. So nobody saw anything of it again, just a bit of side fluke disappearing in the dip like a whale rolling once near surface. And so he stood with his crossing guard sign and said, hey, guess what? That new place, you ought to know if you are a writer. The Montessori school where all these people bring their kids was a funeral parlor. And the classroom where the kids eat slices of apple was where the old perv used to drain corpses of bodily fluids and pump them full of chemicals. And look at how much competition there used to be. That big joint full of condos, Stiff City, and my aunt had her wake there. So what do they do with the bodies now, huh? And this school, nobody else remembers when they sold it. When the guy died, it came out, he had a vault for his movies of people having sex with dogs, creepy stuff, child porn, stag films, and nobody knew until the final guy who did the real estate valuation mentioned it to the kid who sold the building and freaked out the state would get involved. And all that made the paper was the break-in. But it was a long time before they sold it to these people who are clueless or forget. So take this bear over there with his chin salad and papoose sack for a kid too big, comes over and stands by you in the most dark-joyed crossing guard in the world. You think that kid gets breastfed with teeth, and you think everybody smells like a lotion made by the bees. The buzz in the air until winter. All right, thanks.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. Welcome back. We really enjoyed your feature here. As we're starting out, that was really great. Thanks a lot. Okay, Adder Ian, are you in the house?
I saw he was on Facebook earlier, but I don't know if he thinks that he can read through Facebook.
What's his name? Sorry.
Yeah. Can I go next, if possible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll go next.
Okay. Go ahead. Read us a poem.
After the next poet, can I go, please, if you don't mind?
Okay. Your name is Adrian David?
Yeah, Adrian David, yeah.
And you would like to go after the next poem. Okay, we have Yuri Rosenshine. I think we have him here as Yuri Sunshine. Can you unmute him?
Hello, Uri.
Uri, welcome, Uri. Let's hear your poem, please.
Okay, I enjoyed everyone reading. Thank you for having me. Poem called The Regime. In comes the ghost to complain of its unhappy union with the communities of the living. Abraham Teixeira, son of João Pedro Teixeira, leader of the Peasant League, is killed by the regime on the road leading from Sapé. Tears filling his beard and waving a fist, he says, "Let it be recorded. Let it be recorded that we are against all systems. No system helps the poor." His old mother beside him vigorously nodding. Why do we no longer hear of the we? They are all dead like my husband. So we talk of justice, but we no longer say revolution, the word that is like bread. Cypress trees emerge above a stony ridge, a ruined house where no one sleeps, a broken fridge. I wander down a pathway like a wheel on a string to render my report. Tall shrubs and old machines, the flesh of trees, the silver air and colorless leaves. The sun is sitting in the sky like a statement in a rock, a promise frozen till it is fulfilled. I say, let there be no dogma. I dogmatize. There's the prison, the razor and the mirror as they were left, the wire chairs in the little plaza, the pit where at gunpoint musicians deposited their horns and scholars their glasses, the mantle where the general installed his picture. If we outpace this dream and wake from the regime, shaking off a beard of tears, what will we see? A pack of shiny birds soaring in a V across a liberal sky, an emblem of the we? Looking down, I find a bullet in my chest. I go around talking with strangers, smoothly, relaxed. I've been shot. I'm dying. Here, look, I say, showing it off. I find my way to the apartment. I shower and apply cologne. I water the plants, feed the parrot, even have a smoke on the balcony. I meet friends at a dinner party. There are drinks and a roast. At dessert, I finally expire in the middle of telling the joke about an old woman who smokes in the rain using condoms, my face white and my torso washed in blood. Thank you.
Thank you, Uri. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Uri. And I should say here also that Uri's new book will be also forthcoming from Mad Hat Press in the next year. So keep your eye out for that.
Like a wheel on a string. We're going to hear from Patricia Carrago shortly. Patricia, hold on. I want to bring up Adrian and then you, and then we'll have a couple of more open micers. Adrian, are you ready now?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thanks a lot. Thanks to Mark, Larissa, and Amanda for this opportunity. My poem is inspired by the pandemic. It's called Mask. So I'll just read it out. The tough times have put a mask on many a face, but weren't we already wearing one in the first place? Concealing our deepest emotions we hide behind a facade, never letting know that our real identities are flawed. The life we live in front of the world is nothing but a farce, where we are mere players trying to conceal our innermost scars. Countless are the days we sugar-coated our words and lied, too careful not to unleash the ruthless animal inside. During our rough patches, we pretend things are all right, leaving the others in the dark about our incessant plight, armed with plastic smiles, crocodile tears, and false hopes, struggling not to stumble while walking life's many tightropes. The skewed version of ourselves everyone believed is on the verge of making us feel terribly deceived, pressured by the continuing expectations and fuss. Somewhere along the way, we have lost the real us. No matter how much we strive to change ways, the elusive guise we have all donned stays. The pandemic may pass, time may make amends, yet you'll be wearing a mask till your very journey ends. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate you being here. All right, finally, we have Patricia Carrago. We've been trying to get you to read here for a while. Patricia, can you unmute and read us a poem?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Larissa. This was published in Blue Pepper recently. Having a party. I do a lot of music-inspired poems. Anna had a good time grooving to Sam Cooke on the radio. Time traveled back to when she, a teenager, teased her hair, wore pencil skirts, twisted to 45s, put popcorn on the Formica table, drank Cokes from the Frigidaire, chatted to friends about Johnny, the bad boy from Glenwood Road. Her American dream resided in expectation, the princess wedding gown, the white picket fence around a Flatbush Victorian, the family genes to be passed on. No matter how hard she tried, Johnny left her for Sally. Other men kept their distance, and early menopause called her instead. Her wedding dress burned, her unborn kids buried, her Victorian house sold to developers. For a lifetime of work, a meager Social Security check, EBT benefits, and a cramped one-bedroom apartment with her tabby, Jenny. A cracked mirror meant 7 more years of bad luck and further decline in her reflection. She lived in quarantine before it became mandatory, held on to her past in boxes, shopping bags, and 45s. The song ended and Anna felt dizzy. On her torn sofa, she thought about Johnny, Sally, and what transpired. With eyes still open, her head rested on the frayed throw pillow. Jenny tapped Anna's shoulder, sniffed under her nose and mouth, realized that she was not responding. Thank you. Thank you, Larissa.
Thank you, Patricia.
Great reading. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate you being here. All right. Cassandra Atherton got up at 7 in the morning in Australia to be here, and I wonder if we could get a poem from her. If you would like to give us a preview of what we're going to hear at your feature on August 22nd, Cassandra, do you want to do a poem? Unmute Cassandra. Okay, Cassandra, do you want to do a poem?
Yep. Is there anyone else that could go while I grab a book off the shelf?
You will be our last open micer. I would like to next bring up Bob Heman. Bob, publisher, poet, very wonderful human being. Bob, can we unmute Bob Heman?
I'm unmuted. I'm going to read 2 sections, they're short, from a long piece called The Serpent Variations that bounce off of the legend of the serpent in the garden. The patterns of the story remained the same, yet each time it was different. Sometimes the serpent was good, sometimes she was evil. Sometimes it was a piece of fruit that they ate, sometimes a small animal. Usually the garden extended without limits, but once it was a tiny room with windows that were painted over and would not open. In that garden, it was the woman who entered, bringing the other and the serpent a treat they could not resist. That they later said it was forbidden only indicated how good it really was.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, and she was perfect. There was no other way she could be. When the serpent came to her, he taught her how to look at her own image in the surface of the water. He gave her paints to color her lips and eyes and a scale so she could see how much she weighed. "You are not pretty enough," said the serpent. "You are not thin enough. He will not want you." She heard every word he said and began her descent from perfection.
Thank you, Bob. Cassandra, are you ready for us?
Yeah.
All right, last but definitely not least, featuring here August 22nd with our Australian showcase. Cassandra, please go ahead.
I'd like to read a piece called Astronaut Ice Cream, which was in an anthology for commemorating the moon landing. At the Smithsonian gift shop, I weigh you down with freeze-dried Neapolitan ice cream. Pink stripe, chocolate stripe, white stripe in between, a kind of no woman's land. Keeping chockberry possibilities at bay. I've never liked the middle band of vanilla ice cream. I've always eaten it last. It reminds me of cheap scented candles or essence in a cake. Vanilla, like sex on Thursdays, I once said. You didn't laugh. I'm not sure if it was because it was a Thursday. In the National Air and Space Museum, you tell me I'll probably be your last lover. And I spend the afternoon worrying about probably, and whether probably means possibly, which would make it more possible, or likely, and why you didn't just say likely. You dragged me around the 17,000 space artifacts, but you're most interested in the Apollo 11 objects. Buzz's helmet appears to be your most favorite, but I'm fascinated with the object labeled pouch storage with roll-on urine cuffs, and wonder why anyone would want to keep the fecal collection assembly. You are delighted to find the astronauts left 93 bags of poo, pee, and puke on the moon, but I don't think that's very friendly, eco or otherwise. You can't say we've come in peace and then leave excrement as your parting gift. We asked the museum curator where we can find the astronaut ice cream. He tells us it was rejected for flight because it was too crumbly for zero gravity. The astronauts had butterscotch pudding instead. So I want a refund for false advertising, and the man in the gift shop says, in space, no one can hear your ice scream, with a wink. And I say, probably, and think that's very likely.
Thank you. Cassandra Atherton, come back August 22nd for our Australian showcase, where people will be getting up at 7 in the morning to read to you. 7 in the morning to read to you. Come on. That's wonderful. Anyway, let's please have another hand for our brilliant emerging poets today. Karina Van Berkum, Noah Burton, Elisa Rusinski, and D. Eric Parkerson. Yay, wonderful reading. Thank you guys, that was really splendid. Really appreciate that. So that's the end of our show.
One more thing to add.
What?
One more thing to add, Larissa.
What's that, Mark?
On August 29, we have the Founders Reading as well.
Oh, yeah.
We have Founders Reading with Quincy Troop and Keith Flynn. And there will be a Q&A, among other things. We will also be talking about the new album that Keith Flynn's record label brought out of Quincy Troop's new spoken word project. So please tune in then as well.
We're having a host reading with Quincy and Keith that day. Their new album is fantastic. And Mark and Jonathan and I will do an extended reading that day. It's a host reading. It will be a great show. August 29th, mark your calendar. Okay, so that is the end of our show. Thank you to our features again. Thank you to our open micers. Thank you for coming to our open mic. We really appreciate your input here. It's wonderful. You give us an element of surprise and excitement each week. We appreciate it. And so, Black Lives Matter. Wear your masks. Be safe, and good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.